What Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle just said about Jesus left Pope Leo XIV in tears, real, unstoppable, soul-shaking tears. Inside a silent Vatican chamber, two men met as rivals and walked out as something else. What happened between them was not politics. It was a collision with truth. And once you hear the words that broke the Pope, you won't forget them. Picture it. Marble floors, candlelight trembling on ancient stone, the crucifix watching from the wall. Pope Leo XIV sits there, ring heavy, shoulders heavier, hearing the whisper that never quits. Am I truly chosen, or just chosen because they couldn't agree? Across from him, Cardinal Tagle, gentle, steady, the man the world thought would be Pope, breathes in, leans forward, and chooses not power, but a cross-shaped truth. Somewhere in that silence, destiny turns its head. But why? And how? And what did he say that made the fisherman's successor tremble? Leo's hands fidget, the ring turning, turning. He stares at the crucifix. The eyes of Christ seem to look back. He thinks of Chicago nights, Peruvian missions, Augustinian vows, small rooms, big needs, prayers that felt like rain.
He never chased a throne. He never planned a crown. And yet the crown found him. And with it, 1,000 voices. Some cheering, some doubting, some comparing him to Tagle with every breath. Rivalry? Yes. Respect? Yes. Peace? Not yet. Not.
Yet, Cardinal Tagle's voice is calm. Not soft, not sharp. The kind of voice that cuts without wounding. Leo, Jesus didn't ask to be crowned. He took water. He took a towel. He washed feet. Simple, disarming, explosive. The words land like a bell ringing once, twice, again. The Pope flinches, not from offense, but from impact, because suddenly it's obvious. The question isn't, am I worthy? The question is, will I kneel? And that question can't be dodged. Leo tries to answer. I didn't seek this, Luis. I never wanted glory. True, mostly. But beneath the words, a flicker, the human ache we all know. Please, God, let them see me as enough. That ache is where the enemy plants seeds. That ache is where grace breaks through. Which will win tonight? Tagle's eyes don't accuse. They understand. He nods, slow, deliberate. We both felt the pull, he admits. But the cross pulls harder. Jesus did not compete. He surrendered. The air gets heavier. The candles bend. The old walls seem to lean in, listening. And then, a silence that feels like a sword. What comes next? No one can prepare for. The Pope's composure fractures. Not in public, not on a balcony, but here, with a brother, under the crucifix. His eyes brim, his chest tightens, his breath stutters. Not weakness, revelation. Tears arrive, quiet, honest, holy. And with them, a sentence ripped from the center of his soul. I'm afraid, Luis. Afraid to fail God, afraid to be seen. Admit it, haven't you felt that too? Tagle doesn't move to console, he moves to truth. Leo, authority in the church is not a staircase up, it's a staircase down, down to the basin, down to the feet, down to the wounds. Each phrase lands, then lingers. Basin, feet, wounds. And something inside Leo breaks, not like glass, like a seed. The kind that only cracks so life can get out. But if this is the crack, what will grow from it? A memory flashes, a slum in Lima, a hungry child, a whispered Ave Maria in a language half-learned and wholly loved. Leo remembers why he said yes to God the first time, not for a chair, for a cross, not for applause, for souls. And, in that memory, the weight shifts. The ring doesn't feel like metal anymore. It feels like mission. But a mission with a cost. Is he ready to pay it? Tagle leans closer. Not as a rival, as a brother. If you need them to see you, you'll never truly see them, he says. But if you look at Christ, you'll find the people in his eyes. That line hangs there, a challenge and a map. Leo's tears slow. His breathing steadies. He looks up. And now the crucifix doesn't feel like judgment. It feels like invitation. What do you think he will say? Then teach me, Leo whispers, not to Tagle only, but to heaven. Teach me to go lower. The words surprise even him. Lower. Not safer. Not easier. Lower. That single word is a revolution. Because if the Pope goes lower, the Church will follow. And if the Church goes lower, the world might look up. But who will resist that change? And how far will this descent go? Tagle's answer is a smile that looks like mercy. Begin with the first scandal, he says. Wash feet the world says are unworthy. And when they ask why, say, because my king did this first. The strategy is simple and dangerous. Dangerous because it leaves no room for pride, no room for performance, only room for love that costs something. Will he dare to live it when it hurts? The room changes. It isn't brighter, it's truer. Leo feels it. The strange lightness that comes when you finally stop defending yourself. He's not the lesser choice. He's not the compromise candidate. He's a servant, or he isn't a shepherd at all. The decision now is not if he'll be Pope, but how he'll be Pope. Crown first, or cross first? You already know the right answer, but will he choose it when no one's watching? Footsteps. Echo faintly outside, reality knocking. Letters to sign, nations to answer, sins to carry. Leo wipes his face, not to hide the tears, but to move through them. His voice returns, clearer, quieter, stronger. Luis, stay near me. Correct me. If I start climbing, pull me down. That sentence is not sentimental. It's a sword, placed in a friend's hands. Who gives another man that power, unless he means it? Tagle bows his head. Then I will serve you by serving him, he says. Not flattery. Allegiance to a crucified king through a humbled pope. And suddenly, what looked like rivalry looks like a two-man yoke. One pulls when the other is tired. One prays when the other is tempted. One reminds the other where the water and the towel are kept. If this is how they walk, what could God do with a church that follows? A tremor passes. Not in the walls, in history. You can feel it, can't you? The story the world expected, ambition versus ambition, isn't the story God is writing. He's writing something stranger, and holier, and harder. A church that leads by kneeling, a pope who climbs by descending, a cardinal who wins by yielding. Are we ready for that kind of scandal? Leo stands, not taller, truer. He touches the crucifix, a brief, fierce touch, like a pledge. No more proving, he whispers, only serving. It's not a slogan, it's a vow. And vows meet tests. Tomorrow will bring criticism, crisis, counsel that sounds wise but isn't holy. When that day comes, and it will he remember this night, this basin, this brother? They walk to the door. The hallway waits. The world waits. Before he steps out, Leo turns back. One last glance at the crucifix, then at Tagle. Thank you, he says, two small words that feel like two open hands. Tagle nods, not triumph, not pity, joy, quiet, anchored, contagious. But there's one more thing he says, the line that will haunt Leo and might just save him. Remember, Tagle whispers, the first tears you shed in office were for Jesus, not for yourself. That sentence locks into place like a key in a door. Leo breathes in, slow, steady, and steps through. And on the other side, a papacy begins again, from the bottom. If this moved you, breathe, comment your country, and tell me this. When ambition whispers, what helps you remember the basin and the towel? Because the next twist in this story, the very first decision Leo makes after this night, will either confirm this vow or betray it, and what he chooses will shock you. The door closed behind them, and yet the echo of that meeting clung to the Pope like incense after Mass. The halls of the Vatican stretched out in silence, but nothing felt the same. His footsteps sounded different, lighter, but heavier too, because now every step was a choice. Crown or cross. Crown or cross. Crown or cross. And that's when it began. The very next morning, Leo XIV faced his first trial, one that would reveal whether last night's tears were a passing moment or the birth of something eternal. A delegation waited. Cardinals, bishops, diplomats, their eyes sharp, their voices ready. On the table lay documents, policies, speeches written by others, polished words, political strategies, the safe path every pope before him had been pressured to follow. But when Leo looked down at the papers, all he could see was a towel and a basin. He hesitated. His hands trembled again, the same way they had in front of Tagle. The thought screamed in his mind. If I follow Christ's way, I will lose their approval. If I don't, I will lose his. A battle raged inside him, and for a moment, he almost broke. But then he remembered Tagle's last words. The first tears you shed in office were for Jesus, not for yourself. The memory burned like fire in his chest. And with a breath that shook the room, Pope Leo XIV pushed the papers away. Gasps filled the chamber. One cardinal muttered under his breath. Another leaned forward, offended. But Leo did not waver. His voice, shaky but resolute, cut through the air. The Church does not need polished words. The Church needs washed feet. The silence that followed was thunderous. No one expected this. Not from him. Not from the compromise Pope. But the more they stared, the straighter he stood. His hands no longer twisted the ring. They opened, empty, ready. And then, the decision that would shock them all. Leo declared his first papal act would not be a diplomatic decree, not a theological statement, not a grand speech in St. Peter's Square. No, his first act would be to kneel in one of Rome's poorest districts and wash the feet of the forgotten. The chamber erupted, protests, whispers, warnings. It will look weak. It will cause scandal. It will diminish the dignity of the office. But Leo's face did not shift. He knew. This was the test. This was the moment. And that. Night under the dark Roman sky, he left the gilded halls and entered the broken streets. Surrounded by cameras, yes, but more importantly, surrounded by the poor, the homeless, the abandoned. He knelt, basin in hand, and did what Jesus did. He washed their feet. The world gasped. The critics raged. But the people, the forgotten, the voiceless, the wounded, they wept. Because for the first time in years, the papacy looked less like a throne and more like the cross. And somewhere, watching from the shadows, Cardinal Tagle smiled. Not because he had won, but because Christ had. But here's the mystery you must wrestle with. What will happen next? Because every act of humility shakes the powers of pride. Every kneeling sparks resistance. Every towel becomes a threat to those who love crowns. And inside the Vatican, there are men who do not want a pope like this. Men who will do everything to stop him. The question is, can Pope Leo XIV survive the storm that is about to break? Tell me in the comments, if you saw a leader kneel and serve like this, would you trust them more or less? And stay with me, Because the next twist in this story is darker, sharper, and far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The storm came quickly. Inside the Vatican walls, whispers sharpened into plots. Some cardinals called Pope Leo XIV reckless, others called him naive, but in secret chambers, in hushed meetings lit by candlelight, a few dared call him something worse. Dangerous, because humility threatens power. Service exposes pride. A pope who kneels makes every prince of the church look smaller. And some would not forgive it. Anonymous letters began circulating. Accusations, rumors, questions about his past. Was he truly fit to lead? Was his election valid? Every whisper a dagger, every headline a shadow. Even the faithful began to wonder, is he strong enough, or will he break under the weight? But Leo did not stop. Night after night, he walked into Rome's forgotten corners, washing feet, blessing the sick, kneeling with prisoners. And with every act, more people followed. Crowds swelled. The poor called him Padre, the faithful called him Shepherd, and the powerful called him a threat. One night, after yet another act of defiance against pride, a messenger ran to him, pale and trembling. "Holy Father," he stammered, "you must stop. There are men who plan to end this papacy." Leo's eyes did not widen. They softened. "Then let them end it," he said, "but they cannot end Christ." And so it happened. A plot was carried out, sudden, swift, shocking. The world awoke to headlines that shattered hearts. Pope Leo XIV assassinated. The Vatican bells tolled. The faithful wept. Millions mourned the loss of a pope who had barely begun. In every square, candles lit the night. Rome itself seemed to groan, but then the unthinkable. As his body was prepared for burial, something impossible occurred. Witnesses swore his lips moved. A nurse fainted. A priest fell to his knees. And in a voice barely above a whisper, Pope Leo XIV spoke. "The church is not mine. It is his. I return it to him." And with those words, he breathed his last. Yet here is the twist no one could have written. In death, his mission burned, brighter than in life. Videos of him washing feet flooded the world. His final words became a rallying cry. And within weeks, millions of Catholics, from Manila to Madrid, from Sydney to Chicago, began kneeling in the streets, washing each other's feet, saying, "It is not about us, it is about him." The movement spread faster than doctrine, faster than decrees. Humility became contagious. Bishops joined, priests followed, even cardinals, once hardened by pride, bent their knees before the poor. The world saw, not a papacy ended, but a church reborn, and Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, once rival, now brother, stood in St. Peter's Square, tears streaming, whispering, "Leo, you won, not by living, but by dying like Christ." No one could have imagined it. A papacy cut short, becoming the spark of a global revival. A pope who ruled for only months, remembered for centuries, not for decrees, not for power, but for a basin, a towel, and tears shed for Jesus, not himself. That is the ending no one expected. The ending that proves once and for all, the church is strongest when it kneels. So let me ask you, if you lived to see such a leader, would you follow? Would you kneel? Would you serve? Tell me below. Because maybe, just maybe, the story of Pope Leo XIV isn't finished yet.